Teman-teman, jadi hari ini saya berkesempatan untuk ngobrol bareng dan langsung datang ke rumah dari Direktur Pusat Informasi PBB atau Unit Jakarta. Nah, namanya adalah Miklos Gaspar dan katanya Pak Miklos ini adalah orang yang suka banget sama budaya Indonesia. Bahkan udah biasa nih beradaptasi dengan gaya hidup masyarakat Indonesia kebanyakan. Kira-kira gimana keseruan ngobrol sama Pak Miklos? Terus nanti kita juga akan tanya-tanya nih soal perang Iran-Israel. Yuk kita lihat gimana ya pagi-paginya Pak Miklos.
Selamat pagi.
Pagi.
Buah-buah kan ada?
Ada.
Oh ya. Harganya berapa?
25.
Oke.
Sini jamur.
Ya, terima kasih.
Bawang bombay.
Aha. Oke.
Tomat.
Tomat tidak perlu hari ini, terima kasih. Ah, kentang. Harganya berapa, Pak?
20.
Oke.
Tadi janjinya sebenarnya di rumah, tapi ternyata Pak Miklos sudah datang duluan di sini, guys. Halo, selamat pagi, Bu Ibu.
pagi.
Good morning,
Pagi, good morning.
sir. How are you?
I am well,
I
how
didn't
are
expect
you?
to meet you here.
Well,
I was
welcome.
expecting to meet you in a traditional market, but it's okay. So this is what you do every day?
Well, almost every day, yes.
Almost every
Yes.
day.
He's better than traditional market because I can order.
Oh,
I ordered mushrooms because that's what we'll be cooking today.
okay. And it's more effective. You
Yeah.
can. It's nearby from your. It's near from your
Exactly.
house.
Exactly.
Okay. So what are we gonna do today?
So we're going to be cooking a mushroom recipe.
Yes.
So
And
I,
this is the-
I ordered 2 kilos of mushroom because he wouldn't have that much
Two
otherwise.
2 kilograms of mushroom. Okay.
I also ran out of bawang bombay, so I ordered
Bawang
that too.
bombay. Okay, garlic. Okay,
Yeah.
garlic.
No,
And
garlic
then-
we need. This is, red onions.
Yes, red onions. Sorry.
I'd like to, this is not for our cooking, but I've run out of fruits.
Oke. Ternyata Pak Miklos suka juga ya guys jamur ya. Jamur 2 kilo mau diapain guys? Coba bisa dibayangin nanti kita lihat ya. We're gonna see what dish that we're gonna make. Do you also like to buy some carrots or?
I don't need them now.
Oh, you don't
Yeah,
need for
yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Alright.
Bawang putih ada? Oke.
Jadi Pak Miklos biasa sering belanja di sini
Iya.
sama Bapak?
Iya.
Oke.
Iya.
Nawar nggak Pak? Nggak nawar?
Nggak nawar.
Okay. Do you also bargain the price? No.
In fact, I give him a tip usually.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I let the ladies bargain.
Oke.
So
Ibu mau belanja apa, Bu? Sudah ya? Oke. Oke. Everything's good?
Yeah.
Everything's clear? So,
that's all we need.
we have buah naga, dragon fruit. We also have mushrooms and red onion. Okay.
And the garlic.
And the garlic. And how much for everything? How much is it? Berapa Pak harganya?
Buah naga 25.
25. Oke.
Sama jamur
Nih, sini deh
Ya.
Pak. Ini ada buah naga.
25.
Ada.
Jamur 2 kilo 120.
120.
Bawang bombay. Bawang bombay 23.
23.
Sama bawang putih 8. 176.
176.000.
Silakan.
Ya.
Silakan. Oke.
7624.
Ibu-ibu biasanya sering ketemu Pak Miklos juga di sini.
Temu.
Oh, every day. Oh, every day you see Pak Miklos buying the groceries here. Oh, oke. 24. Oke, Mas. Terima kasih. Kita balik dulu pulang ya. Thank you ya, Mas ya. Sampai ketemu lagi besok. And we're going to your house.
Sure.
Oke, yuk.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Terima kasih.
Sampai jumpa besok ya.
We arrive at home and now we are gonna do the unpacking things. And
Thank you. It's
okay,
not very
before we
often-
cook, we're gonna unpack the stuffs.
Sure. It's not very often that somebody helps me carry my food home, so thank you.
You're most welcome. Okay.
It's a lot of mushroom to cut later.
Yes. Actually, I've never done this in my house.
Wow.
No, I'm proud of myself.
You've never done unpacking mushroom?
Never, actually, to be honest, never.
Okay. Well, you learn a Hungarian recipe today. Not sure if there's enough room.
We need another bowl.
Here you go.
Yes, this one's good. Everything is almost ready, and now we're gonna do the house tour. Maybe we can see around. What do you think?
Sure. Happy to show you around.
Okay, let's go.
Let's go.
Okay, so how long have you been staying here, living
3
in
years.
Indonesia?
I've lived here for 3 years.
3 years. How do you like Indonesia so far?
I like it a lot.
You like it a lot.
Yes. It's always good weather, the people are nice, a lot to learn.
So, sir, you are a director of UN Information Center based in Jakarta. What are your duties here and what are you responsible for?
So indeed, I'm the director of the UN Information Center, responsible for Indonesia and the Philippines. And my work consists of documenting, demonstrating, and reporting on the success of the work of the UN in support of the government towards development objectives in Indonesia and again also in the Philippines.
Oh,
So I talk about the work of the UN, I talk about the values of the UN to audiences both locally in these countries, and then globally I publicize the impact that Indonesia and the UN, our cooperation, has on development.
okay. So you travel a lot to some other countries in Southeast Asia, especially in Manila, Philippines, or in Jakarta, and you also work with, like some foundations here in Indonesia.
So sometimes I travel to other countries, but I travel quite a bit in Indonesia. So I'm very lucky in that I get to visit UN projects, see the impact on the ground, talk to people and talk to the counterparts, often the provincial, the local government or NGOs, and then write articles or do short films, social media videos on this, which we then promote abroad as well, so that the world sees all the work that goes on in Indonesia and its impact.
Oh, okay. Well, so this is your 3rd year
I've been
living
here 3 years, yes.
in Jakarta.
Yes, in this house.
Yes, how's everything?
Well, I really like it here.
Do you like
Absolutely.
working in
I mean,
Jakarta?
the work is very interesting. I get to work with there are over 20 UN agencies who work here in Indonesia in collaboration with the government, and I work with all of them. Absolutely. I really appreciate the diversity of that. I also get to meet with a lot of Indonesian people, young people. When I travel, I go speak at universities. I have interactions with people from, I've had interactions with people from Aceh to Papua, the whole country. And I feel very privileged to be able to live in such a beautiful and diverse country and learn.
Yeah.
While I talk about the UN, I learn a lot about Indonesia. We're chatting at the pool.
Okay, sure. You've got a nice neighborhood.
Yes, I really like it here.
So, sir, a lot of things happen in the past 3 years, like Israel-Iran's war, Israel-Gaza's war, not to mention there is Ukraine and Russia's war. So how do you guys deal with it? How does the UN take actions about it?
So the UN, the United Nations, was created 8 years ago. It's our 80th anniversary year. And in fact, just yesterday was the anniversary day of signing of the UN Charter. And the UN was created at the end of the Second World War to make sure that no more world wars were happening. And it's done a pretty good job in avoiding wars. Of course, the UN is not a global police. The UN cannot tell countries what to do. There's the Security Council, which was set up, and it's the victors of the Second World War that sit on the Security Council, and they are able to pass resolutions and take action against countries that start wars. In the case of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, of course, one issue is that it's one of the permanent members of the Security Council that is one of the parties to that war that invaded its neighbor. So in a situation like that, the setup that was created at the end of the Second World War to stop wars isn't effective because one of the parties of the conflict has veto power. There are other ways in which the UN can help in a conflict, and its chief area of work is humanitarian in that regard. You can see that in Gaza. In the Hamas-Israel war, a lot of people in Gaza are suffering. There's shortage of food, medicine. I mean, you see it in the news every day. The United Nations and its agencies make all the effort they can in order to provide humanitarian relief to the people who are suffering. With mixed success, but without the UN, things would be much, much worse. The UN is in a position to negotiate with all parties in a conflict for access to civilians for humanitarian work. Various UN agencies, the UN's Children's Agency, the UN's Food Agency, the Health Agency, the Disaster Relief Agency, and then the agency created specifically for Palestine are there on the ground helping people in this horrible situation.
Yeah, I believe it's quite challenging for the UN to take some actions because there is this veto right for some countries like American United States of America. And it can be a barrier to some actions. So how much power does the UN have to enforce its will on the strongest nations within it?
Sure. So the UN, it's not, first of all, it's not just the US that has veto power,
Yeah.
right? There are 5 countries that have veto power on the Security Council, which means they can stop a resolution even if it otherwise had majority on a 15-member council. The UN is only as strong as the mandate it gets from member states. The UN was created by countries, it has 193 member states, and it can, in any particular conflict or in any situation, it has as much power as granted to it by the member states, which by definition means that its own actions power is sometimes limited, and that's on purpose by the member states. That's the multilateral setup. The UN provides, it's the largest multilateral organization in the world. It provides, it's a unique forum where every country is represented and every country can have a voice. And the UN has passed, important resolutions, including towards peace. Peacekeeping is one of the areas where the UN works, and we can see what happens when the mandate of a particular peacekeeping mission ends. Then, sadly, civil war can again start in a country. So the UN does what it can within its mandate, but the way its current setup is 8 years old, which is why the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, started 2 years ago a process to make the UN fit again for the 21st century. And part of that is to perhaps reform the decision-making mechanisms of the UN. Most member states today were still colonies at the time the UN was founded. The UN, there's no representation from Africa, for instance, on the Security Council. Right? The only sort of developing country is China, among 5 nations. And there are also similar issues at the decision-making structures of many of the UN organizations. So this is being looked at so that it can be reformed and made more fit for today's world. But at the end of the day, the UN Secretariat and the Secretary General can make recommendations, but it will have to be member states, it will have to be countries that vote on it.
So we know that the Trump's administration is seeking to cut billions of dollars of UN funding, and thus the eliminations of US funding would substantially change the UN. Does the UN feel threatened about it? There's a lot of peacekeeping operations funded by the United States.
The operations of the UN are funded by all member states.
Yeah.
But their funding, these are called assessed contribution, a bit like a tax, is based on a country's size in terms of population and its economy. The US, as the biggest economy, is therefore the largest contributor, and so any cuts to the UN contribution, and therefore any cuts to US contributions to the UN will obviously have an impact. It's not just the UN, there are also other member states that are late in paying or are not fully paying, so that is certainly an issue. The UN believes that as the biggest and most important multilateral organization in the world, the chief forum for global diplomacy, it's the world that will lose if funding of the UN is cut, and therefore some of its operations, particularly as you mentioned, peacekeeping, have to suffer. In 2025, the amount of money at the disposal of the UN Secretariat is about 30% lower than 2 years ago. So that's a huge reduction that the UN needs to figure out how to solve.
Do you guys know how to solve it
Well,
so far?
So first of all, already before these cuts by the US administration, there was a reform process underway by the Secretary General called UN80, like as I mentioned earlier, to make the UN, this multilateral forum for peace, more fit for the demands of the current era. This requires consolidation, gains in efficiency, but this has to be done in a well thought through and structured manner. And that's what's being worked on. There are different work streams that the Secretary General initiated to see how the UN can also become more effective, more efficient, and consolidate some of its resources. At the same time, if funding is cut abruptly from one day to the next, that will really threaten the ongoing work, whether it's peace-building work, humanitarian work, or development work. And those who will suffer will be, already the people who are the most vulnerable in the world. Those who live in conflicts, those who live in poor countries, and those who are survivors of natural or man-made disasters. So I hope we can avoid that situation. The UN has 193 member states. They will all get a say. They all have to vote on any changes to the UN's budget and the way the UN operates. So like anything in multilateral diplomacy, there will have to be a compromise at the end of the day.
So how does the UN see Indonesia's role in the United Nations?
So Indonesia is a very active participant of the multilateral system, including in the UN. It takes a very active role and sits on the boards of several UN agencies, takes part in decision-making. Indonesia also has some senior diplomats and officials who play roles in the UN. For instance, the Executive Secretary of UN ESCAP, which is the body for economic coordination in Asia Pacific, is an Indonesian, as is the Special Envoy for Water of the Secretary General, is Ibu Retno, the former foreign minister. Indonesia is also active in supporting many resolutions, putting forward many resolutions at the different UN agencies. And Indonesia, as a fast-growing economy and an upper-middle-income country, is also taking an increasingly active role in sharing its own development experience with other countries. In UN jargon, we call this South-South cooperation, when two countries from the global South cooperate via the UN, on the platform of the UN. So Indonesia is increasingly active in many UN agencies in sharing its own development experience with the poor countries, whether in Asia or in Africa. So it's over time becoming from a recipient to also becoming a contributor of the multilateral development system. So Indonesia, as a stable and growing economy, the fourth largest country in the world, an upper middle income country, really has a lot to contribute and show to poorer countries, smaller countries that are at stages of development far further back from Indonesia. So perhaps the biggest contribution of Indonesia to the UN, though, is its peacekeeping contribution. Indonesia has the fifth largest peacekeeping contingent from among any countries. There are several thousand Indonesian peacekeepers, both military and police, working and serving in hotspots, mostly in Africa, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, in the Central African Republic, in South Sudan, but also in Lebanon. These are, trouble spots where, frankly, if it weren't for UN peacekeepers, there would be war, probably. And the UN is very thankful for all the contribution Indonesia makes through its military and police to global peacekeeping. The dish we are making is not very complicated to make. Okay. I mean, it's a long time.
What is it? What is it called?
It's called mushroom paprika.
Mushroom paprika. It's a soup? Or?
It's not a soup. It's like soup. A stew. Tilda, my daughter, she's making the dough.
Oh, okay.
Kind of like pasta. And then what we are making is a mushroom sauce. Oh. So it's kind of like a curry, perhaps. And it's called paprika because that's the main spice.
And it's common in Hungary.
Yes. So paprika, I'll find it later. That is sort of the most typical spice in Hungary. So Hungarian food, among Western food, is the one that's the spiciest.
Oh, okay.
It does not come close to, sambal, but still. So that's why for us it's perhaps a bit easier to adapt to Indonesian cuisine
because it's quite
than maybe for other bule.
Yeah. I see that you're also like an environmentalist. Like you really love other than nature, you also love to preserving some stuff here.
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't say I'm an environmentalist. I mean, I believe it's very important for us to live as sustainable way as possible. Only consuming what we really need. I started a composting here.
This one?
That's I can show you later, just outside. Initially, the security guards and the gardeners here would collect my compost and put it in the garbage. But I explained that it's no harm to anybody. It's in my own private area. Because the biggest issue with waste management is when organic and inorganic is mixed together. Then you cannot use either. So see here, it doesn't disturb anybody.
Okay.
And very quickly decomposes.
Okay.
The climate is so favorable for this. And we put these bushes around so the neighbors are not bothered. and particularly the gardeners are not bothered.
Jadi Pak Miklos ini suka bikin pupuk kompos gitu guys. Jadi ditaruh di sini, dibuang di depan rumah. So you like to make a compost from every day, you know, like the rest of the food, something like that.
All of the ingredients you can get locally.
The sour cream and the mushroom and everything.
Yeah, even the salad.
It tastes like sayur lodeh versi internasional. Nah, jadi ini adalah makanan khas dari Hungaria. Tadi udah dibikinin sama Pak Miklos. Jika kita udah ngobrol-ngobrol banyak juga soal kerjaan Pak Miklos. We were talking quite much about your job, about this food. So I hope you really enjoy talking with me, having the session with me today.
Sure.
And maybe next time we have our own show or a cooking show, or we can talk more about maybe United Nations project. Yeah, why not? Yeah?
Excellent. We are available anytime, and thank you for coming, for your interest, and perhaps your viewers will enjoy some Hungarian food. Maybe we can share the recipe.
Okay, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Please come here.
Yeah, we can have food too.